I think that if in October you had told me that all three of my favorite hockey teams would end up going to the playoffs in their respective league, I would have said, what the hell's a PWHL? So I'm obviously very excited about tonight and the fact that Minnesota just reverse swept Toronto in the semifinals, which is a bit of a silly thing to call it considering it's the first round of a 2 round playoffs, but it's nonetheless very exciting to have at least one of my teams end up going to the finals in their respective league. It's very exciting to be able to watch women's professional hockey. I know that there are other leagues that have tried this, um, several leagues for women's hockey that are still around. But this is by far, I think, probably the most um, covered women's hockey league that I've seen. Um, if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. But when I heard about the PWHL, I was very excited. When I've heard anybody mention the PWHL, I've always been like very tuned in. And so obviously, I got everything Minnesota, right? And I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think about this league, how it's been doing so far, and things that I would like to see improve in the next like couple of seasons. Um, so first of all, I just want to say that I really like where this league is as far as a starter. This is obviously their inaugural season, and so there's a lot of new interesting things that they have to go through in order to try to make this as successful as possible. Obviously, the intention is that it should be something like the WNBA, where, like, yeah, obviously it's not going to be as popular as, like, the major league male league, but it should have a dedicated fan base that will follow it. Um, I really like that it's pretty familiar hockey. As somebody who's watched the NHL for years now, probably since I was like 14 years old, I've been watching the Tampa Bay Lightning. That's my hometown team, and yeah, it's very familiar hockey. Still a very physical game. There have been some roughing, a little bit of fighting. Um, Obviously, there's less teams, so there's a little bit less like competition to get into the playoffs. But overall, it's very familiar hockey, and I really like it. Um, One of the things, I think if you asked me like a month ago what I thought about the fact that none of the teams have names, um, I would have, told you that I really think that's a bad idea. But now, Utah is also not going to have a name for their inaugural season. Obviously, the Arizona Coyotes moved to Utah, and they decided that they're not going to choose a name yet. And so now that I've heard that, I still think it's a really bad idea to not have any kind of mascot for the team. It's really tough to talk about PWHL because I have to call it the PWHL Minnesota team. I can't just say Minnesota because there is a Minnesota hockey team called the Minnesota Wild. And I'm actually not a fan of the Minnesota Wild. Notice they're not one of these three hockey pucks. Um, and so I really think as soon as they can, they really need to like figure out a different name, some kind of name that they can call these teams. That is a little bit more a little bit more like unique to the team, that isn't going to be confusing and that you have to constantly say PWHL Minnesota team or whatever. I think that's something that they should really I don't know if they're close to that, but they need to get on that, because branding is really important when you're trying to build up a fan base. And it's just not quite there yet. That brings me to the second thing that I kind of have been thinking about over the last couple of months, since this team has started, or since this league has started, and that's locations. Location. I don't live in Minnesota. I've never lived in Minnesota. But I've also never lived in New York. I've never lived in Ottawa. I've never lived in Montreal or Boston or Toronto. The locations where they are very close together, which makes sense. It saves on travel. It saves on being able to like get from one location to another in order to play other teams. But over the next however long it takes, I would really love to see this league branch out from like this very like northeastern area, maybe trickle down a little bit closer to Virginia, which is obviously where I'm living now. That's why I'm a fan of the Norfolk Admirals, because I live in Virginia. And I can literally go to those games. I'm literally about to get season tickets to see the Norfolk Admirals, because I can go, and it's probably the only team that's within a reasonable driving distance of where I live that I can go see them. I think the closest NHL team is, if I had to guess, it would probably be New York. No, actually, it would be the Capitals. It would be the Washington Capitals. But they are hours away from where I live. That is not like a reasonable drive. And also, I'm not a Capitals fan. At all. But that's kind of beside the point. These locations, again, it makes sense where they are. When you look at them on a map, you're like, that makes sense. They're very close to one another. But the fact that I had to pick a team that's nowhere even close to where I live is kind of saying something. I only chose Minnesota, honestly, because it's purple. It's a purple team. I love purple. It's my favorite color. And so I was just like, okay, if I have to pick a team, I guess I'll go with the purple team, which is Minnesota, which just so happened to be the team that is going to the finals for the Walter Cup, which is great, and I'm very proud of them. But also, I wish I had a little bit more connection, maybe like a team that I could like reasonably go to. Again, the closest one I think would be New York, the PWHL team in New York. I think that's what I was thinking of earlier when I said like the closest one. And that's nowhere even close to where I live. I would have to drive like 5 hours to get to New York and to go watch a game. And hopefully it's a Minnesota-New York game and I can wear something like this. Editing Zara here. I cannot believe I forgot to mention the actual reason I was bringing up the locations thing. Because I wrote down notes for this video, and one of the notes was locations, and so I was just kind of whiffing. I looked at it. One of the reasons I kind of don't like the locations that they chose is because those are already cities that have like professional hockey teams. Toronto Maple Leafs, Boston Bruins, Minnesota Wild, Montreal Canadiens, New York Rangers, and Islanders. Which I don't know if the PWHL team is supposed to be for the city or for the state. Either way, it's covered. And the Ottawa Senators. It would have been really cool if they had chosen locations that did not already have well-established, well-beloved hockey teams, because it makes it really difficult to, like, get people to give your team a chance when they already have a hockey team that they follow heavily. And maybe they chose those cities because they're cities with really, like, dedicated fan bases for professional hockey, but I kind of feel the opposite way to that, where it's kind of like, no, you want to get new fans. Isn't that what they always talk about? Isn't that why they why they put a team in Arizona? Because they wanted to get new hockey fans. Utah, they want to get new hockey fans. As far as I'm aware, the only hockey team in Virginia is, and I know I keep bringing up my home state, but I mean, come on, is the Norfolk Admirals, and they're not a professional hockey team. I mean, I've seen those games, and they're not, like, super clean games. I mean, it is very obvious why these are ECHL players and not NHL players. I don't know exactly what they could have done. Maybe, keeping with the location thing, maybe they could have put a team in Green Bay. That would have been interesting. I know that's also a football city, but if you want to get new hockey fans, that would be a great place. Quebec, could you imagine the PWHL gets a team back in, a professional hockey team back in Quebec before the NHL does? Do you know how hungry Quebec City is for a hockey team? I'm sure they would eat that up in a heartbeat. They should consider that. If they're considering expansions, they should consider Quebec. Absolutely. Hands down. Just other cities. Get out of these cities. Or, obviously stay in the cities, but go to places where they don't already have well-established hockey teams. I think it seems a little bit like you gotta figure something else out. Hartford, come on, these are easy. Quebec, Hartford, like, go to cities where, like, they're really pissed off. If you want to extend more south, Atlanta, like, I would love that. I would love that so much. But you gotta figure something else out. That, these locations, like, I get it, but, like, also I don't get it. Like, again, you just gotta figure out these locations and do something a little bit different. That's my only suggestion there. And finally, broadcasting. It's really tough to, like, follow these games when the broadcasting is so restricted, and I get it. I think the best service that's broadcasting women's hockey is, I think it's like a women's like specific sports network. But they don't have any. I can't find a way of watching it, and so the only way that I can watch games is if it just so happens to also be on a channel that is available with YouTube TV. I've tried going and using TSN, which I guess is the Canadian ESPN, but I don't live in Canada, so when I've tried to use TSN, I cannot, because it's geo-locked, and oh, by the way, NordVPN does not work. It does not help me to watch these games because I don't have a Canadian address to put into this. So it's a mess. It would be really great if they could find a way of broadcasting these games to make it more available for people to especially casual fans, to be able to turn it on and there it is. I can watch this game, and maybe they're a first time person ever watching women's hockey, and they're watching it and they're like, oh, this is actually really good. Like, let me continue to watch these games. That's how you hook people that are channel surfing, and they'll end up finding it. I'm very happy that tonight's game was available on YouTube. I saw it. I was able to watch it live, which was great, but that's not happening every single time. And so there's really got to be something that they can do, preferably by next season, to make it more available to watch. But yeah, I'm really happy with this league. I'm really happy with where it's starting. It's starting out very strong. I believe they can get better. I believe they can get stronger. And I really hope for the best. I hope this is a league that continues on and on and on and gets as much success as it deserves. It's a women's league, so obviously it's harder for women's leagues to get popular, but the WNBA is a very popular league, and it's not as popular as NBA, but it has its dedicated fan base, and I think the PWHL can definitely, build up that kind of dedicated fan base. But they got to fix up a couple things. They gotta smooth some things over, and I think that there's a real good chance of it. So, let me know what you think. If you were a fan of any PWHL team, let me know in the comments what you thought so far of this league, what potential you see. I think I think that it's got a lot of potential. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. Talk to you later. Bye.